Ms. Judge Ellison. I'll be presiding over this trial today, the People versus Avery Becker. At this time, prosecution, are you prepared to begin the trial?
Yes, Your Honor. Prosecution is prepared.
And defense, Mr. Polanco, are you prepared to begin the trial as well?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense is ready to prepare.
All right. Then, Mr. Al-Adsani, your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, opposing counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have arrived upon a case with a clear answer and no reasonable alternative. Avery Becker murdered Coach Mackenzie Brackman. After breaking in and trashing his residence, the opposing counsel is attempting to cast a doubt upon this case by relying on Miss Becker's alibi during the time of the murder. They'll first bring Miss Becker, who will naturally say or do anything in order to escape the truth. Then they'll bring Miss Becker's best friend in the world, Taylor Perkins, introducing a crystal clear bias in favor of Miss Becker. Finally, Blake Van Owen, a said expert in police practices who did not even show up to the crime scene and who simply looks for flaws in others' hard and professional work. Opposing counsel tries to deceive you of what really occurred on that tragic night of March 6th, 2020, by relying on a false alibi using not just Miss Becker's best friend in the world, but Miss Becker herself as witnesses, and relying on the opinion of Mr. Blake Van Owen, who never stepped foot on the scene. On prosecution, we will call Alex Cifuentes, a close friend of Avery's who knew what really happened on March 6th, 2020. Next, we will call Kyle Kuzak to the stand, who has 19 years of experience in investigating complex crime scenes and conducted a full investigation with the police. Finally, we will call Detective Jordan Markowitz, an expert detective who has been in this field for 7 years now and was the first on the crime scene. Your Honor, we will call true experts in crime scene investigation and a close friend of Avery's to show you that Avery Becker murdered her innocent mock trial coach, Mr. Mackenzie Brackman, out of pure malice, fear, and above all else, revenge. Revenge, Your Honor, for being kicked out of the mock trial team, for being unquestionably slovenly and disrespectful towards Coach Brackman. Revenge for being kicked off the mock trial team for the second time after taking action and vandalizing Coach Brackman's car. Revenge above all else corrupted Miss Avery Becker cold-heartedly and led to her murder of Coach Brackman in cold blood. Of course, Miss Brackman will say she was somewhere else on the tragic night of the event, casting a shadow of doubt upon the case. But there is no reasonable doubt because we have undeniable proof that her alibi is deceptive. We all have experienced a need for revenge, but Miss Brackman is clearly not in control of hers. Would someone in control of their cold-hearted drive for vengeance act upon their aggression and vandalize someone else's car? No. Thus, I ask you, if someone cannot control their aggression once, who's to say they have not done it the second time? So to conclude, witnesses of inexpertise and bias defend Avery Becker against professional experts in their fields and a true close friend of Miss Becker's. Your Honor, this false alibi has one purpose and solely one purpose: to cast the shadow of a doubt. I'm here to tell you, though, today we will deliver true justice and accountability to Miss Becker's actions on the night of March 6th, 2020, finally proving that this trial is beyond a reasonable doubt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Al-Adsani. At this time, the prosecution call their first witness, Ms. Smith.
The prosecution calls Alex Cifuentes to the stand.
Ms. Cifuentes.
Right here, Your Honor.
All right. Would you raise your right hand and I'll swear you in? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give before the court today shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
All right, you may lower your hand. Ms. Smith,
Could you please state your full name and spell it for the record? Spell the last for the record.
Alex Cifuentes, Sifuentes.
And do you know why you're in court today?
I do. I believe that my good friend Avery Becker has murdered my coach for mock trial, Mr. Brackman.
And how do you know Mr. Becker?
Avery was the person who got me into mock trial in the beginning, and we've done it together ever since.
And how well would you say you know him?
We're good friends. Like I said, we've done mock trial together, and we've always pushed each other to be better.
Would you say that you're rivals?
Definitely not.
And how did Mr. Becker conduct himself in mock trial?
Avery never put in the work that the rest of us did for mock trial. He would show up to practice late. He would do things on the fly. And yes, he did have the talent for it, but it wasn't really what you should do for mock trial.
And how did he interact with Mr. Brackman that you observed?
Objection, speculation.
Your
in
Honor,
response, Ms. Smith?
yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, this is not speculation, as it is not something that she wasn't there. I'm simply asking Ms. Cifuentes to explain what she observed of the interactions, not the internal nature of their feelings for each other or their knowledge and relationship.
All right, I'm going to overrule the objection at this time. To Ms. Cifuentes, you may testify as to your observations.
I will restate the question, my dear. Could you please tell us what you observed of Mr. Becker and Mr. Brackman's interactions?
Yeah, so from the beginning, Avery and Coach Brackman never got along. Coach is an amazing litigator, and he wants all of us to work hard, and Avery just wouldn't put in the work, and they were always getting into arguments during practice.
And were you there for the first time that Mr. Becker was removed from the mock trial team?
I was. So it was the upteenth time that Avery had arrived late to practice, and finally after practice, Brackman rightly demoted him to the B team.
And were you present for the second confrontation as well?
I was. That was the practice after our regional tournament.
What did you observe occurring during that confrontation?
Well, at the regional tournament, Avery, of course, won a handful of awards. And what happened at that practice was Brackman had to have a conversation with him that this isn't how attorneys in the real world can do their job.
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
Okay, I will ask you to say something differently. What did you see occur outside of the direct argument, their actions towards each other?
It was at practice, and Avery and Mr. Brackman were having an argument when we were going over what happened at the tournament.
And did anything happen afterward that you saw?
Yeah, so what I saw, it looked like Avery was getting really angry, and so finally he stormed out of practice.
And what happened to Mr. Brackman's car?
Yeah, so Avery stormed out of practice, and I saw on his way out, he grabbed a Sharpie from the pad of paper that we were writing notes on, and he took the Sharpie and he wrote Worst Attorney Award all over Coach Brackman's lovely vintage white Porsche.
After Becker was kicked from the team, did he try and contact you at all?
He did. He texted me and he was asking me to.
Objection, hearsay.
Ms. Smith, response?
Your Honor, this is not hearsay as it is a direct piece of information from the defendant himself, and that is an exception under the rules of hearsay.
I'm going to overrule the objection, a statement against interest by a party. You may answer the question, Ms. Cifuentes.
So Avery texted me and he wanted me to try to get him back on the team. And I said I would try for the sake of the team because we needed him.
And how did that go?
I went to Mr. Brackman. I made a plea to let Avery back on the team, but of course he said no.
And how did Mr. Becker react that you saw?
Objection, speculation.
Ms. Smith, any response?
Your Honor, again, I'm not asking for the internal nature of the relationship or the internal workings of Mr. Becker's mind. I'm simply asking Ms. Cifuentes what she observed of the reactions that occurred.
Going to overrule the objection. The question was what Ms. Cifuentes observed in the victim's reaction.
I will ask again, Ms. Cifuentes, could you please tell us how you observed Mr. Becker react?
He was frustrated, of course.
And after this frustration, did you see him again?
Yes, a little bit after that, we met him at the Fry Shack.
What did you observe of him there?
We had a friendly conversation. We talked about how he should move on from being a mock trial team, from being on the mock trial team.
That is all, Your Honor.
All right. And here I need to have a point of order that I need to admit that the judge did not permit defense to present their opening statement. So after Ms. Cifuentes' testimony here, it's a little bit difficult doing a trial on Zoom. So this is my first one of these. So after Ms. Cifuentes' testimony, I will permit defense obviously to give an opening statement. All right, cross-examination of Ms. Cifuentes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Isn't it true that you were accused of faking text messages between yourself and Avery Becker?
I was, which doesn't make any sense.
Well, let's talk about your police interview. Did you bring your phone to the interview?
I was charging my phone and I completely forgot to bring it.
So is it correct that you just sent screenshots of the text messages between Avery and yourself to the detective?
Yes, I emailed them to the detective.
And after sending these screenshots, isn't it true that you got a new phone?
Like I said, the phone wasn't holding a charge, so I decided to upgrade.
And are you aware that Mr. Becker lost his phone the night of March 5th?
Yes.
And isn't it true that you would play the game on his phone that night?
Yes, he was showing me a new game on his phone at the Fry Shack.
So moving on to your relationship with Avery Becker. Isn't it true that you think the mock trial team was better off without Avery on it?
We were worse off because he was the most talented member of the team, but it was better that we didn't have arguments between him and Brackman all the time.
But did you specifically say that the team was better off without Avery on it?
Yes.
Now, is it correct that you were excited to have a larger role when Avery was kicked off the team?
I was. Of course, I was sad to lose my friend and being able to compete with him on the team, but it was exciting.
So
to get
would you say that you took mock trial pretty seriously?
Yes.
And didn't it bother you that Avery would make things up on the fly?
It sort of annoyed me. Yes.
And isn't it true that you said Avery was just coasting on good looks alone, not real talent?
Yes.
And you were upset that Avery won the best attorney at regionals, weren't you?
Yes.
But after saying all this about the defendant, Mr. Becker, Ms. Fuentes, isn't it true that you said, quote, we are basically best friends, end quote, in reference to Avery Becker?
Yes. Even though we had different work ethics, we were still friends.
But you still said all of that stuff about her.
Friends have some things that annoy them about their friends.
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Smith, do you have any redirect of this witness?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. May this witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And at this time, due to the court's oversight previously, I will permit Mr. Polanco to present defense opening statement. Mr. Polanco, my apologies.
Thank you. May it please the court, counsel, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, no face, no case. My name is Rudy Polanco on behalf of Avery Becker, and today you are going to hear about a murder investigation that was clearly rushed, used potentially false evidence, and a detective that states that Avery is guilty, even knowing though you couldn't see the intruder. In this case, you're going to hear about one of the most heinous crimes that a human can commit, the murder of Mackenzie Brockman. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, make no mistake, this was plain and simple murder, but by who? The Ring doorbell security system, as you will come to learn, caught an unknown person entering the property that was covered in a full face mask, wearing gloves, and a gray and black long sleeve jacket. There were no critical identifying features on this suspect. If there is no face, then there cannot be a case. Next, you are going to hear about the prosecution's expert witness, a faulty detective who rushed this investigation and corrupted evidence under his leadership. Detective Markowitz is a homicide detective who jumped to conclusions about who the real perpetrator was and lost critical evidence. Detective Markowitz relies on the Ring security footage, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will come to learn you cannot see this person's face or any identifiable features. Now we are going to hear from Kyle Kuzak. Kyle Kuzak is a certified crime scene reconstruction investigator. Mr. Kuzak needed more physical evidence to make sure his report was accurate. Mr. Kuzak states that there was no cast-off blood spatter until a knife was pulled out of the victim. Mr. Kuzak would have found this piece of evidence helpful to determine exactly where the victim was stabbed, but the evidence was lost by the detective. Next, we are going to hear from the prosecution's final witness, Alex Fuentes. Alex is a senior at Colorado High School, and as we will come to learn, that it shows a clear pattern of jealousy towards Avery Becker, as Mr. Cifuentes was always having to work twice as hard than Avery. Now we will come on to the defense's witness. You are going to hear from the defendant. Avery Becker did have a vendetta against Coach Brockman. Coach Brockman kicked Avery off the team because he came unprepared to mock trial practices. Avery was obviously mad about this as he won Best Attorney Award and mock trial came naturally to him. In retaliation, Avery did write some words on Coach Brockman's car, which he is extremely apologetic and regretful for. The question is, was he so mad that he can kill Coach Brockman over a simple mock trial dispute? Next, we are going to hear Taylor Perkins. Taylor Perkins is a freshman at CU Boulder, and Taylor was on the mock trial team with Avery, as they were close friends. Taylor and Avery spent the entire day looking for the phone that Avery lost the night before March 6th. You will hear that they went to the Fry Shack and spent the entire day looking for the phone. They went to the Fry Shack as the afternoon shift got in, waiting to see if the phone was there. Next, the defense's final witness is Professor Van Owen. Professor Van Owen is a private investigator and a former police officer with the Denver Police Department. Along with being a private investigator, Professor Van Owen is a teacher at CU Denver on police practices and social justice. Ladies and gentlemen, you will come to learn that Professor Van Owen stated that this investigation was clearly rushed. The problem with a rushed investigation is that it can lead to serious doubts on who committed the crime. We will also hear how Professor Van Owen has significant doubts that Avery killed Coach Brockman. So who committed this murder? Ladies and gentlemen, in your honor, you are going to hear about Blair Rollins. You will hear that Blair had a better motive to kill Coach Brockman, as Brockman lost the case against Blair's dad. You will hear that people would say that Blair Rollins would be the person capable enough to kill someone. Professor Van Owen dug deeper than the detective and pulled yearbook photos from Avery and Blair Rollins. He concluded that Avery and Blair had very similar body types, and if placed back to back, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. The professor's final conclusion is that he believes that this investigation was rushed and Blair Rollins had a better motive to kill Coach Brockman than Avery did. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you need to consider the facts, which are the prosecution has a faulty detective who lost critical evidence and rushed this investigation. Falsified evidence and surveillance video where you cannot see this intruder's face. So consider this, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. If you cannot see a face, then how can there be a case? It is clear that the prosecution will not meet the exception of proving their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we the defense ask that you, the jury, ask for a verdict of not guilty and not put a young, innocent man behind bars.
Mr. Polanco, thank you. To the prosecution, you may now call your second witness.
The prosecution calls Kyle Kuzak.
Mr. Kuzak.
Hello. All right.
All right. And Mr. Kuzak, I'll ask you to raise your right hand and I'll swear you in before your testimony. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give before the court today shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. You may go ahead and put your hand down. Ms. Erickson.
Thank you. So, Mr. Kuzak, could you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Kyle Kuzak, and my last name is spelled Kuzak.
So, Mr. Kuzak, could you explain what you do for a living?
So I'm a part of the Colorado Bureau of Investigators. I'm a certified crime scene reconstructor and investigator, or a CSR in this acronym, with like 19 years of experience in regards to investigation, and investigating scenes, including home invasions, burglaries, properties, fatal accidents, and such. And for the past 3 years, I've been with the city of Denver. I am not a police officer. I am a civilian.
And at this time, I'd like to enter Kyle Kuzak in as an expert witness.
I believe this is Ms. Henry.
No objection, Your Honor.
The court will so recognize Mr. Kuzak as an expert. Ms. Erickson, in what field?
In police investigation.
And Ms. Henry, no objection to that particular field?
I own the only field with no objection would be for crime scene reconstruction.
So Ms. Erickson, at this time, do you have further foundation that you'd wish to lay for Mr. Kuzak's testimony regarding police investigation?
No.
Okay. Ms. Henry, excuse me, I'm trying to keep everybody's names right. Ms. Henry, would you like to voir dire the witness at all?
Your Honor, I would only like to object for police investigation due to the fact that he has no certification and is only certified in crime scene reconstruction and only has experience really in that field.
Ms. Erickson, any response to that?
I think it is sufficient for him to be recognized as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
All right. The court will recognize Mr. Kuzak as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, finding no objection by the defense to that field, and I will permit Mr. Kuzak to testify as such.
Thank you. So, Mr. Kuzak, you are aware of why we're here today?
Yeah, yes, I am.
And you have investigated the crime scene.
I have gone in person and investigated the scene of the murder. Yes, I have.
And so what method did you reach your conclusions on this crime scene?
I go through a lot of methods, but I generally try to do a 5-part sort of approach to it, where it's recognition, documentation, collection, and hypothesis to sort of get the most straightforward view on the scene.
And what did you analyze from the scene?
I analyzed on the scene that a person on March 6th, matching the height and build of the defendant, approached the house, was captured by the Ring doorbell and other security cameras, and went to the sliding glass door, opened it, and went inside the house. And inside the house, there appeared to be scuff marks by the door.
Narrative.
Is there, Ms. Henry, objection?
Yes, objection to narrative.
All right. And Ms. Erickson, any response to that?
I simply asked the witness to describe his analysis of the scene, and I think he has more details he would like to share.
Okay. I am going to sustain the objection narrative, and so I will ask you to direct your questions so that it avoids narrative answers.
Yes. So just to start over, what was the first thing you would point out in the series of events of the crime scene?
The first thing I'd point out is the Ring doorbell and how that may have alerted the victim.
And what did you gather from the footage of the Ring doorbell?
A person going towards the house, completely concealed, but the height and build matched, which is most important.
And further on, what next once you are inside the house, what next would you point out?
I would point out the open knife drawer and also the block missing a knife as important to acknowledge.
And to the victim himself, what would you say about that?
In the victim himself, for the wound, I would say that the attack itself, well, not the attack, sorry, the wound generally fits the knife shape, since the knife itself was 12 inches in length and had parameters such as 7.5 inches and 2.5 inches at the widest point. And so as well fits in with the size on the knife block.
And so, Mr. Kuzak, can you summarize, in your professional opinion, what most likely was the series of events of the crime?
Yes, I can. So I believe that the person, the intruder, came inside, the victim was aware, and there was a struggle, which is apparent from the broken plate on the floor, which Van Owen, I would like to mention, did not mention in his report. But apart from that, there was a struggle, and the knife was jammed into the back of the victim. It tore through his artery, and it was in his shoulder blade. And so I would, there was a struggle. The scene itself, or like the event itself, could have gone quickly because of such a fatal wound, since it nicked the artery. And so the only possible way.
Narrative.
Ms. Erickson, any response?
Yes, I think that Mr. Kuzak has laid out sufficient details. I can move on to my next question.
I will sustain the narrative objection made by Ms. Henry. Ms. Erickson, your next question?
And finally, Mr. Kuzak, what would you conclude from the series of events that you have laid out?
I conclude that it is not a sneak attack. There is no possible way that it could have been a sneak attack based off of the evidence of the Ring doorbell, the opening door, and the fact that the attack could have not been a sneak attack because of the way the knife had to be held.
And finally, are there any reasonable alternatives to this?
There's no reasonable alternatives to said thing, because the only way it would be possible is if an entirely different set of events occurred, and that in itself cannot be said.
Thank you, Mr. Kuzak. Those are all my questions.
All right. Cross-examination, Ms. Henry.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Kuzak, is it correct that you currently work as a civilian employee and not a real police officer?
Yes, it is.
And you are only certified in crime scene reconstruction, yes?
Yes, it is.
Is it true that the perpetrator's face was never seen?
That is true.
And would you say you were able to recreate all the events and evidence from this case?
Yes, I was.
You would say you were able to recreate all the events and evidence from this case?
There were some corrupted files, but those corrupted files did not pertain to the importance of said reconstruction.
1 second, please.
Of course.
So when it comes down to it, yes or no, would you say you were able to recreate all of the segments and evidence from this scene?
No.
Okay, moving on. Some of your investigation was from police reports, is that correct?
Yes.
And would you say that it was true that reading a report would give the same understanding as being there in person?
I would say no.
And would you say that you wished you had more evidence from this case?
I would say the evidence I have is enough.
So you would not say that you wish that you had more evidence from this case?
I wish I would have more evidence from this case, but the evidence I have proves the point I already was trying to prove.
But you cannot truly place Avery Becker at the scene due to no face evidence or DNA, is that correct?
DNA is not needed because generally there can be gloves and not all the things can be touched, so you can't go generally based off of that.
But you never saw his face and there's no DNA of Avery Becker's at the scene of the crime, correct?
Correct.
And is it true that you visited the scene only after it was processed?
Correct.
And I would also like to ask, is it true that you believe that Blake Van Owen has made some conclusions outside of your area of expertise?
That is true.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. And any redirect, Ms. Erickson?
No, Your Honor.
All right. May this witness be excused.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Al-Adsani, I believe you are counsel for the third prosecution witness.
Sorry about that. I was trying to unmute myself.
That's quite all right. Would you go ahead and call the third witness, please?
Please state your name and spell the last for the record.
Mr. Al-Adsani, I'm going to interrupt just one moment. Would you call that witness? What is this witness's name?
Sorry, I call Detective Jordan Markowitz to the
All
stand.
right. And Detective, at this time, I will ask you to raise your right hand and I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give before the court today shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
All right. You may lower your hand. Mr. Al-Adsani, you may go ahead and begin your direct examination.
Okay, sorry about that.
All right.
Please state your name and spell the last for the record.
Detective Jordan Markowitz, Markowitz.
And what is your profession?
I am a detective for the Denver Police Department.
How long have you been in your field?
I've been a police officer for 13 years and a detective for 7.
Do you have any specialties in your field?
Yes, I have a cell phone technology and forensic data recovery certificate from the American Academy of Law Enforcement.
Did you have to do anything specifically to receive your certificate?
Yes, I had to go through a 3-day training course and take a certification test.
Your Honor, I would like to move at this time that the court qualifies Detective Jordan as an expert in crime scene investigation and cellular technology.
All right. And I believe this is Mr. Polanco's witness. Mr. Polanco, any objection?
No objection at this time, Your Honor.
All right. I will recognize Detective Markowitz as an expert in that field, and I will permit her testimony to be as such. Mr. Al-Adsani, your witness, your next question.
On entering the crime scene, or the residence, what did you observe?
There was a man lying face down on the floor. He had blood pooled next to him, and there was a knife next to him as well. He also had a stab wound in his upper left shoulder.
And how were you able to identify the victim?
When they turned the victim over, I immediately recognized who it was. I've been crossed on multiple occasions by Mr. Brackman, unfortunately.
So after going through Brackman's contents, what did you find?
I found a lot of emails and text messages from something called Mock Trial, and doing good police work, I followed that trail to Colorado High School and received the information for the mock trial team for that school.
What did you conclude about all these texts and emails?
They likely, well, they could have had something to do with the case.
Objection and speculation.
Mr.
Your Honor,
Al-Adsani.
Your Honor, I can skip the question.
All right. I will sustain the objection as to speculation.
After understanding the contents of Brackman's work life, what did you do?
I contacted members of that mock trial team. The first one was Alex Cifuentes, and had Alex come in for a interrogation at the police station.
And what did Brackman do to Avery Becker?
Brackman kicked Avery Becker off the mock trial team after several disrespectful events.
And how did Alex Cifuentes respond to this?
Alex?
Yeah, Mr. Cifuentes.
Alex was disappointed that his friend had been kicked off the team, but unfortunately there was nothing he could do to get Avery back on the team. Coach Brackman was very set.
And how did Ms. Becker respond to this?
I'm sorry, Mr. Polanco, there was a little bit of feedback. Was that an objection?
Oh, no objection here, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just got a little bit of feedback on my side. Mr. Al-Adsani, I apologize for the interruption. Go ahead.
Yeah. How did Ms. Becker respond to this?
Ms. Becker, the first time was just mad, but the second time, Ms. Becker took a permanent
Objection. The
marker.
response calls for narrative.
Mr. Al-Adsani, any response?
Yes, Your Honor. Detective Jordan here is stating facts of how Ms. Becker responded to this rather than telling a narrative.
I'm going to overrule the objection at this time. I find that she has gotten about 2 sentences into an answer and it doesn't consist of a narrative at this point.
Would you like me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
So how did Ms. Becker respond to this?
Ms. Becker had taken a Sharpie marker to Mr. Brackman's white Porsche.
Okay. So after the interview, did Alex send the screenshots of the text messages?
Yes.
Your Honor, permission to show the witness Exhibit 14.
You may approach the witness and show the witness that exhibit.
Okay. Unfortunately, I do not have a copy on with me right now. Do you have a copy yourself?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Is this a fair and accurate representation of the texts?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do immediately after receiving this evidence?
I tried to contact Becker and have her come in for an interview as well, but unfortunately, I was told by Becker's lawyer that there is no way that I could contact her except through the lawyer.
Were you still able to at least warrant a search to Miss Becker's phone?
Unfortunately, I was not able to because Miss Becker's phone had not transmitted any more data after the crime and was likely either destroyed or turned off.
But you were still able to obtain the details of Miss Becker's cellular records after receiving Miss Becker's contact information.
Yes.
What did her contact history reveal?
Her contact history revealed several messages and calls sent to her phone. None of them were picked up or responded to.
Did this seem unusual to you?
For a teenager, yes.
Your Honor, I would like to show Exhibit 15 and 16 to the witness.
Right, you may approach the witness and show her those exhibits.
Do you have those exhibits with you?
Yes.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of the route Miss Becker took?
This is a fair and accurate representation of the route I believe Miss Becker took to get from her house to Mr. Brackman's house.
Your Honor, I would like to enter them into evidence.
Okay. Are you offering just 15 and 16 or are you offering 14 as well?
14 as well.
All right.
If-
Mr.
yeah, 14.
Polanco, any objection to the 3 exhibits as offered?
No objection to Exhibit 15 that has been marked, but Exhibit 15 calls for speculation and Exhibit 14 calls for hearsay.
Okay, so no objection as to 16. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly.
No objection as to 15.
As to 15, okay.
Mhm.
And Mr. Al-Adsani, I will admit Exhibit 15. Mr. Al-Adsani, any response to the objection as to Exhibit 14 or Exhibit 16?
To exhibit 14 was speculation, correct?
I believe Exhibit 14 was based on hearsay and Exhibit
Okay.
16 was based on speculation.
Well, Exhibit 14 was directly from the defendant. I don't believe that is hearsay. Those are direct screenshots. And as to Exhibit 16, no response.
Okay. Did you have
okay.
something more, Mr. Al-Adsani?
Oh no, that was it.
I will admit Exhibit 14 over defense objection, finding that it is a statement of the defendant. I will sustain the objection on Exhibit 16 as at this time it does call for speculation. There has not been appropriate foundation for that exhibit.
Finally, what did the CDR data indicate?
CDR data indicated that Becker receives a call off of the cell tower nearest to her house, a message off of the path to Brackman's house, and several calls and messages in the vicinity of Brackman's house.
Based upon this, who do you think committed the murder?
I believe Avery Becker committed the murder.
Objection, speculation.
Mr. Al-Adsani,
Well, this is not speculation, as Detective Jordan is an expert in this case. She has experience in her field, and it qualifies her as for an official answer.
I am going to overrule the objection. However, I am going to do it based on this witness did the investigation and was asked for her opinion. While she has been qualified as an expert and permitted to testify as an expert in the field of cell phone technology and cell phone data, I am going to permit her to testify as a lay witness regarding her opinion on the ultimate outcome of whether she believes this individual committed the crime. So I'm overruling the objection, Mr. Polanco.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Okay. Mr. Polanco, cross-examination of this witness.
Yes. Detective Markowitz, let's start off with the defendant, Avery Becker. You learned that Avery was kicked off the mock trial team, correct?
Yes.
Isn't it true that you also stated that Avery lost her phone on March 5th, 2020?
I cannot know that for sure. I am not Avery Becker, and that is what her witness statement says.
Okay, but you did learn or hear of that Avery Becker did lose their phone on March 5th.
Yes, her lawyer had told me that.
Okay, let's move on to Alex Cifuentes. Did you interview Alex?
I did, yes.
And in your testimony, you stated that Avery texted Alex, correct?
Yes.
Did Alex bring their phone to the interview?
No, he had forgotten his phone.
Isn't it true that you had Alex send you screenshots of this conversation?
Yes, right after the interview.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury and detective, can we turn our attention to what has been marked as Exhibit 14 and entered into evidence? Did everyone get a chance to look at that exhibit? You stated that Exhibit 14s are accurate copies of the screenshots.
Yes.
Are you aware that it is common knowledge that you can download an app on your phone where you can create fake text messages?
Objection, Your Honor.
Mr. Al-Hassani, on what basis?
Relevancy.
I'm going to overrule the objection based on relevancy. It's calling
Detective,
for
do you
whether
need
or
me
not
to-
detective is aware. So I'm sorry, Mr. Polanco, go ahead.
Thank you. Detective, do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Are you aware that there are fake texts that you can download on your app that can create fake text messages?
No.
If you knew there was an app that allowed a user to create fake text messages, then that would have impacted your investigation, correct?
Yes. I suppose so.
Okay, moving on. Okay, moving on to cell tower analysis. In your testimony, you state that the phone pairs to the cell tower with the best signal, correct?
Most likely it will pair to the nearest cell tower, but if there is a lot of people on a certain cell tower, it can pair to another spot.
And isn't it true that the closest cell tower might not be the one with the best signal?
Not necessarily, but as I said before, most likely the phone will still pair to that cell tower.
And you stated there's a lot of people in a certain area, then the phone will connect to a further tower with the best signal, correct?
Yes.
Isn't it true that you only subpoenaed on Avery's cell phone tower records and no one else is in the vicinity?
Yes.
You also found that there were several calls and texts sent by Taylor Perkins to Avery Becker, correct?
Yes.
You also learned that Avery lost her phone on March 5th, 2020.
From her lawyer. Yes.
You were called to a scene where a victim was found dead near their porch.
Yes.
Was the victim's face down with a stab wound to the shoulder and back area?
Yes.
Was there a knife near the victim?
Yes, there was.
And would you state that Mackenzie Brockman would have to have been sitting down, not standing up at the angle they were stabbed?
I believe.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Mr. Polanco, any response?
Your Honor, this witness has been tendered as an expert in her field, and she would be able to determine exactly and how the victim was stabbed, depending on the angle that the stab would went into.
I permitted Detective Markowitz to testify as an expert in the field of cell phone technology and data records. Don't believe that she was offered or admitted or permitted to testify as an expert in particular crime scene investigation.
Okay, sorry, that's my bad.
So I'm going to sustain that objection.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury and opposing counsel and detective, can we turn our attention to what has been marked as 5 and 8? Does everyone have these exhibits in front of them? Detective, do you recognize these pictures in front of you?
Yes.
What are they?
Exhibit 5 is a picture of the bloody knife that was lying next to Mr. Brackman on the floor. And Exhibit 8 is a picture of the knife block with a knife missing.
And how are you familiar with these exhibits?
I went to the scene and saw the knife block with the empty slot and the knife lying on the floor.
And are these fair and accurate copies of the exhibits?
Yes.
And have these pictures last been altered since the last time you've seen them?
No.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to enter exhibits 5 and 8 into evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Al-Adsani?
No, Your Honor.
All right. I will admit exhibits 5 and 8.
Detective, are the knives the same color or style?
No.
You would say that both knives are different from the exhibits, correct?
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to a little. For a little, you've been a homicide detective for 13 years, correct? Or a police officer for 13 years, correct?
Yes.
And you've received specialized training in investigating homicides?
No. Only cell phone technology and forensic data recovery.
But for 7 years, you have been trained as a homicide detective, correct?
Yes.
And from those investigations that you've investigated, you understand the importance of properly collecting evidence
Yes.
and properly preserving that evidence.
Yes.
You understand that if you do not properly collect and preserve evidence, an improper result can be reached.
It is possible.
And would you want an improper result reached in this case involving the murder of a citizen of your city?
No.
Okay, keeping in mind what we just went over, there was a broken plate on the floor, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Were there blood drops on that plate?
I cannot testify as to that. I did not do that part of the investigation.
And so let's move on to, are you familiar with cast off blood?
Yes. I've seen it at many
Was there
cases.
cast off blood at the scene?
I believe so.
Did you photograph the cast off blood?
We did.
And are those pictures in evidence?
No, they are not. Unfortunately, the files were corrupted, but it should not have a real impact on the case.
Right, but a piece of evidence was corrupted under your investigation, correct?
I believe that was under Mr. Kuzak's.
Okay. So under your detective experience, those pictures were corrupted.
Yes.
And moving on to the ring security footage, did you see any surveillance cameras?
Yes.
Isn't it true that the ring security system sends you a notification when someone is on your property?
Yes.
Isn't it also true that those notifications, you can't tell if those notifications were on or off?
There's no evidence to say that they were on or were off.
Mr. Kuzak, you stated that you can test that you can know if the push notifications were on or off if you were to download the contents of the entire context of Mr. Brockman's settings on their phone, correct?
Can you please repeat that in a different way?
Yeah. You stated that you can notice if the push notifications on for the ring security footage was on or off if you downloaded the entirety of the context of Mr. Brockman's settings.
I suppose so.
But you only subpoenaed his phone and passwords, correct?
Yes.
So you failed to subpoena Mr. Brockman's cell phone data, the entirety of his cell phone data, to see if he had those notifications on or off.
I suppose I did.
Your Honor, at this time, my co-counsel will, after the following line of questionings, we will show what has been marked as an exhibit regarding the ring security footage. Is it okay if we screen share?
Okay, you may, well, at this time, it has not been admitted into evidence. So are you trying to screen share with the witness?
Not just now. I was just wondering if it was okay if we screen share in a few questions down the road.
You certainly may screen share an exhibit that's been admitted.
Okay. Detective, are you aware of the ring security footages that were at Mr. Brockman's house?
Yes.
Did you review those footage?
Yes, I did.
And last time you saw were they a fair and accurate representation of the footage?
I have not seen the footage as of today.
The last time you saw them, were they the same footage that you saw?
Objection, Your Honor, relevancy.
Mr. Polanco?
Your Honor, this is going to show the intruder, also known as the main suspect in this case, which is relevant to see the motive and the way that this intruder entered Mr. Brockman's home.
I'm going to overrule the objection at this time.
Do you need me to repeat my last question?
Yes, please.
Were they in a fair and accurate representation of the footage the last time you saw them?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, Your Honor, at this time, we'd like to enter exhibit, just a sec, sorry. Exhibit, what has been marked as exhibit, I believe that it is marked as exhibit 13.
Any objection, Mr. Al-Adsani?
No objections at this time.
Does Your Honor, the jury or the detective need to review the security footage?
I will permit you to admit it, and I will ask that you screen share the video just briefly, Mr. Polanco.
Okay. My opposing counsel, Alexa Henry, will now start screen sharing the video.
Okay.
Detective, in that video, can you see the intruder?
No.
Could you see if they were male or female?
No.
Could you see their face?
No.
Could you see their skin color?
No.
Can you see their hair color?
No.
So this could have been anyone.
With that right build. Yes.
So this could have been Blair Rollins, and you wouldn't even have known, knowing that she has the same build as Avery Becker.
It could have possibly been, though it is highly unlikely considering my other evidence in this case.
Okay, but it still could have been Blair Rollins, and you wouldn't even have known.
There is a very slight possibility.
In your opinion, you have the person responsible for this murder as Avery Becker, correct?
Yes.
And that remains your opinion, even knowing that the evidence was not properly preserved.
I believe that the evidence that was lost is not pertinent to this case, and it was not under my jurisdiction. It was under Mr. Kyle Kuzak's.
Okay, but that still remains your opinion, even knowing that you cannot clearly identify the individual on the Ring doorbell footage?
Objection, Your Honor.
On what basis?
Relevancy. I'm sorry, I do not see how Mr. Blair Rollins plays a part in this.
Your Honor, response.
Mr. Polanco?
Your Honor, Blair Rollins is a potentially separate suspect, knowing that there could be another suspect in a murder investigation, I do believe that this is relevant towards the case.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I do find it to be material, whether there was an alternate suspect. You may re-ask the question, Mr. Polanco.
Thank you. That remains your opinion, Detective, even knowing that you cannot clearly identify the individual on the Ring doorbell footage?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect, Mr. Al-Atsani?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
I wanted to go back to the crime scene. When did you arrive upon the crime scene?
14-20 hours.
And I want to ask you again, how long have you been in your field?
I've been in my field as a police officer for 13 years and as a detective for 7.
Okay. No further redirect.
Any recross based on that question, Mr. Polanco?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused, Mr. Al-Atsani? All right.
Yes.
At this time, Mr. Al-Atsani, I believe that was your final witness. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And Ms. Petrucci, would you call the defense first witness?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to call Taylor Perkins to the witness stand.
All right. Mr. Perkins, if you would go ahead and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give before the court today shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
All right, you may go ahead and lower your hand. Ms. Petrucci, your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please state your first and last name and spell your last for the record.
Taylor Perkins, Perkins.
Where did you go to high school?
Colorado High School.
And what clubs did you participate in while you were there?
I was on the mock trial team.
And who was the coach?
Our coach was Mackenzie Brown.
And are you familiar with Avery Becker?
Yeah, he's one of my best friends.
And were you guys on the mock trial team together?
Yes, he was the one who actually encouraged me to join.
Now, there was an instance where Avery was kicked off the team. What did you do in response to that?
When he was kicked off the team, I stepped down from A team so he could take my position.
Are you familiar with Alex Cifuentes?
Yes, I am.
How so?
He was also on the mock trial team.
Did you ever have an opportunity to see Avery and Alex interact with one another?
Yes, on multiple occasions.
And can you tell the jury about the relationship between Alex and Avery in which you witnessed firsthand?
They appeared to be rivals, mainly over mock trial stuff.
Now, moving on to the day of March 5th, what happened?
Avery drew on the coach's car and got kicked off the team. Oh wait, no, we went to Fry Shack.
And did anyone show up while you were there?
Yes, the mock trial team.
And did Avery and Alex speak at the Fry Shack?
Yes, they did.
And how did Avery respond to Alex just being there and talking to her?
Objection, Your Honor. To
On what grounds?
speculation.
Okay,
Speculation.
thank you, Ms. Petrucci. Response?
Your Honor, I believe I've laid foundation as to Taylor Perkins was firsthand there at the Fry Shack, and he would have noticed what Avery did in response to Alex talking to him.
Going to overrule the objection. Mr. Perkins, you are permitted to testify as to your observations, not as to what another person thought.
After talking, Avery stormed off to the bathroom and left his phone on the table.
And was that unusual for Mr. Becker to leave his phone behind?
Yes, it was highly unusual. He typically has his
Objection,
phone
Your
on
Honor.
at all times.
Speculation again.
And Ms. Petrucci?
Your Honor, I believe that this witness has already testified to being best friends with the defendant, and he would know as to if it is unusual or not unusual for the defendant to leave his phone.
Going to overrule on the grounds of speculation. I'm going to permit the witness's answer that he has previously stated to stand.
Thank you, Your Honor. And where did Avery leave the phone?
He left it on the table by me and Alex.
And do you know if Avery picked up his phone when you left?
I am unaware to that fact if he grabbed his phone when we left.
Okay, let's talk about the morning of March 6th. What happened that morning?
Avery came and picked me up for school, but we ended up not going to school because it had turned out that he had lost his phone, so we searched for that instead.
How long did you guys search for this missing phone?
Pretty much all day.
Now, to the afternoon of March 6th, where did you guys go?
That afternoon, we headed back to Shack.
And who showed up to Fry Shack that night?
Surprisingly, the mock trial team showed up again.
And why were they not at practice?
They had told us that Coach Brackman hadn't showed up, so they just followed the 15-minute rule and left.
And what did you find out had later happened?
Later found out that Coach Brackman had been murdered.
And just to reiterate for the jury, were you with Avery all day on March 6th, the day of the murder?
Yes, all day.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. So, Mr. Perkins, as to you and Avery's relationship, do you have a high opinion of him?
I do, but he could be lackadaisical sometimes.
And you would say you have a good idea of Mr. Becker's character.
Yes.
Would you describe him as rash?
Rash, but not the murderous type.
You witnessed many fights between him and your coach, Mackenzie Brackman, correct?
Correct.
On one such occasion, Avery Becker was demoted.
Yes.
You consequently resigned from the team.
I stepped down from A team.
Yes. You did this so that Avery could again be on the A team.
I did. I felt that he was a better lawyer.
Not on cross-examination. I'm going to overrule the objection and allow the witness to answer.
So you did this so that Avery could again be on the A team?
Correct. I felt like he was a better lawyer.
In a following competition, Avery won the Best Attorney Award, correct? Shortly after, he was again demoted?
Yes.
Because of yet another heated argument of Mr. Brackman, correct? With
Yes.
Mr. Brackman. In response, Avery vandalized Mr. Brackman's expensive car.
Yes.
To move to March 5th, the day before Mr. Brackman's death, you claim that Avery Becker lost his cell phone?
Yes. I believe he left it at Fry Shack.
And you know Avery very well. How important was said cell phone to him?
Highly important. It's very unusual for him to lose his.
Yet he still lost it?
Correct.
And you claim he did not realize it was gone until the next day.
We did search for it the next day, in the morning when he realized it was missing. Yes.
And at which point you both decided to skip school?
Yes, we ditched school and spent that day together searching for the phone.
And And coincidentally, the very day you skipped school, Mr. Mackenzie Brackman was murdered.
Yes, he was.
As we have been alerted to, Avery's phone was near Mr. Brackman's house the very day, was it not?
I don't know if I can testify to that
Well,
on my own evidence.
yeah, I guess I'll rephrase. You have heard the other witnesses' testimonies that Avery's phone was near the residence of Mr. Brackman, correct?
I have heard that,
And
but I don't believe my testimony should be considered in that.
yes. And you later talked to Avery and found out about a certain Blair Rollins involvement.
Yes, my speculation is on Blair Rollins. However, yes, yeah.
Thank you. And you claim Alex Cifuentes was involved as well.
Alex Cifuentes and Blair Rollins are known to be friends.
Do you like Alex?
I'm not.
Objection, relevance.
Ms. Erickson?
Yes. This is relevant because I'm trying to establish that Taylor Perkins might have had motive to claim Alex has stolen Avery's phone on the grounds that he does not like Alex.
I am going to overrule the objection. Ms. Erickson, you may ask the question again.
So, Mr. Perkins, do you like Alex?
I'm not very fond of him.
And you claim, just to clarify for the jury, that Alex Cifuentes stole Avery Becker's phone, correct?
That is what I personally believe, yes.
And furthermore, that Alex then gave Avery Becker's phone to Blair Rollins, who proceeded to frame your friend for the
Objection,
crime.
speculation.
Ms. Erickson, response?
I'm merely asking this question to present his opinion, not for the truth of the matter, but for his personal perspective of it.
I'm going to sustain the objection based on speculation. I do not think that this witness has personal knowledge of what happened with that phone.
So you said earlier that Alex and Blair are known to be friends.
Yes.
What proof do you have of this?
Speculation.
So your proof to their friendship is merely your word?
They do talk and hang out together quite a bit.
I have no further questions.
Any redirect, Ms. Petrucci?
Yes, Your Honor. So, Mr. Perkins, do you remember if Avery Becker picked up his phone the night at that fry shack?
Again, I don't remember. I do not think he did.
And were you with Avery Becker all day on March 6th?
All day we were together.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
And Ms. Erickson, any recross, on that limited redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right. May this witness be excused, Ms. Petrucci?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Defense, would you call your second witness, please?
The defense calls Professor Blake Van Owen to the stand.
All right. Professor Van Owen, if you would raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give before the court today shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Mr. Polanco, your witness.
Professor, can you please state your first and spell your last name for the record?
Blake Van Owen, Vanowen.
What do you do, Professor?
I am a private investigator, a professor on police procedures, and an expert witness in police practices.
And where did your police work begin?
It began at the Aurora Police Department, but I did
Sorry, it seems that we've lost the witness.
I'm sorry, what was
Just a
that?
second. Okay, sorry, it seems like we dropped you for a second. Do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Where did your police work begin?
It began at the Aurora Police Department, but I soon left that department.
And why did you leave that department?
I left after an incident I had where I injured a young woman of color during an arrest. I was cleared of wrongdoing as the technique I used was approved by the department, but I never fully cleared myself.
Relevance?
Sustained.
I'll move on. And why did you officially stop being a police officer?
Because after that incident, I realized that I disagreed with a lot of police department policies.
And what do you do with your time as a professor?
As a professor, I started teaching police procedures at a community college, and then I got my master's in criminal justice. And then after that, I started teaching courses at CU Denver in police practices and social justice.
And outside of your teaching obligations, what do you do?
I help out as an expert witness in the courtroom in police practices, use of force, false arrest, forensic evidence techniques, crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and police investigation tactics.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to enter Professor Blake Van Owen as an expert in police practices, forensic evidence techniques, crime scene reconstruction, and general police investigation tactics.
All right. Ms. Smith?
I have no objection, Your Honor.
All right. And Ms. Van Owen will be permitted to testify as an expert in those 4 fields.
Professor, did you prepare an expert report in this case?
Yes, a copy of my report is in Exhibit 20.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury and opposing counsel, and Professor, can you please turn your attention to what has been marked Exhibit 20? Professor, do you recognize this paper in front of you?
Yes, it's a copy of my report.
How are you familiar with this exhibit?
I wrote it after I conducted my investigation.
And is this a fair and accurate copy of this exhibit?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move Exhibit 20 into evidence.
Ms. Smith?
I have no objection, Your Honor.
Finding no objection, the court will accept Exhibit 20 into evidence.
Thank you. Let's move on to the evidence in this case. What is your expert opinion on the stabbing itself? Sorry, Your Honor, it also seems like we lost my witness one more time.
I think Ms. Van Owen or Ms. Casola has been having some technical difficulties this morning.
Yes. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Sorry about that. It just keeps trying to reconnect.
That's quite all right. That's what we do these days.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Polanco, you're a witness, so you may continue questioning.
Thank you. Let's move on to the exhibit in this case, Professor. What is your expert opinion on the stabbing itself?
So the stabbing itself, the direction of force that was applied was in a downward motion and aimed towards his aorta. And this suggests that the victim was sitting down. And in order to stab someone in the back like that, the assailant would have been standing over the victim. And then this indicates that the assailant attacked Mr. Brockman from behind.
Your Honor, as previously noted, Exhibit 5 has, I believe, already been entered as an exhibit.
It has. It was accepted during the testimony of, Detective Markowitz.
Okay. So, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury and opposing counsel and detective, can you please Professor, sorry, can you please turn your attention to what has been marked as Exhibit 4?
Yes.
What is this exhibit?
It's a picture of Mr. Brackman laying down on the ground, deceased.
And how are you familiar with this exhibit?
It is a crime scene photo I found in my investigation.
And is this fair and accurate representation of this exhibit?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to enter Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. Exhibit 4 will be received and admitted.
Professor, can you tell the jury about the style of these knives?
First of all, so the style of the knife of Mr. Brackman's wound was a different style of knife and brand from all the knives in the knife block.
You also stated that the stab wound was an indication that Mackenzie Brockman had to have been sitting down. Can you explain to the jury how you came to this conclusion?
Yes, so the direction of
Objection,
the,
Your Honor. Relevance. What does the position of the victim have to do with the case?
Mr. Polanco, response?
Your Honor, as previously stated as stated in the witness's testimony, you can tell how the victim was stabbed, if it was a premeditation to murder or if it was a surprise by the victim, or if the victim was surprised by the intruder.
I'm going to overrule the objection at this time. Mr. Polanco, you may need to re-ask the question.
Thank you. You also stated that the stab wound was an indication that Mackenzie Brockman had to have been sitting down. Can you explain to the jury how you came to this conclusion?
yes, so the direction that Mr. Brockman was stabbed would indicate that someone had to be standing over him. So like if you're stabbing someone on a downward motion like this, for that angle of the stab wound, you would have to be standing over them.
And let's move on to the entry of the home. Did you notice any signs of forced entry?
No, I did not. Except there's a few scuff marks on the floor, but you can't carbon date scuff marks.
Thank you. Let's move on to the Ring doorbell videos. Did you see any video cameras at the scene?
Yes, I noticed a few Ring security cameras.
Your Honor, at this time, do we recall the exhibit that I published and was entered as an exhibit about the Ring security footage?
Okay. And I believe, Mr. Polanco, that was Exhibit 13.
Yes. Opposing counsel or detective, does opposing counsel need time to refresh their memory on this exhibit, Your Honor?
Ms.
No,
Smith?
I
Okay.
recall the exhibit in question.
And detective, do you need time to refresh your memory on this exhibit?
Is it the video?
Yes.
Yeah, could you refresh my memory?
Yes. My co-counsel Alexa Henry will now screen share the video one more time.
I'm sorry, could you play the video?
Yes. Detective, in this video, can you tell the identity of the intruder?
No, I can't determine any identifiable features, making it close to impossible to identify them.
Are you aware that if the Ring doorbell app allows push notifications?
Yes, it does, but you can turn them on and off.
And can we tell if Mr. Brockman had these on or off?
No, we can't because Detective Markowitz failed to obtain those records.
And let's move on to Blair Rollins. In your testimony and report, you state that Blair Rollins had a better motive to murder Mr. Brockman. Can you please tell the court how you came to that conclusion?
Yes, so Blair Rollins is actually the child of Jonathan Rollins, which was represented by Mr. Brockman in a case, and then Jonathan Rollins was then sentenced to life in prison. And so Blair Rollins also spoke at the trial. And then on the way that Mr. Rollins was going back to jail, he screamed that Mr. Brockman was going to die.
Your Honor, at this sorry, Professor, do you recognize what has been marked as Exhibit 22 is going to be a recording of the said trial where Mr. Rollins screamed something?
Yes, I do. I've heard it before.
And is it a fair and accurate representation of the exhibit that you heard?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. How would Professor Van Owen have any idea if this recording is a fair and accurate representation of what occurred at the trial?
Mr. Polanco, response?
Your Honor, this recording was taken inside of the courtroom, as the courtroom is obviously always recording and tracking and stating that they have recorders in the courtroom itself. So this recording came directly from the courtroom at Mr. Rollins's trial.
This time I'm going to sustain the objection. This witness does not have personal knowledge of the statement nor how this recording was obtained.
Okay. Professor, I will move on to, can you tell, in your witness testimony and your expert report, you have a final conclusion. Can you please let the jury know what that is?
Yes. So my final conclusion to this case is that this investigation was clearly rushed. You can clearly see that Detective Markowitz's lack of basic police work and work ethic chose like Avery Becker as a suspect and ran with it. And ignored all the other evidence that didn't match his conclusion. The Denver Police Department has not have done nearly or any investigation of this case. And then the clear suspect is Blair Rollins, which had a stronger motive and didn't have an alibi for that day. After all, they did lose their dad in a trial that Mr. Brockman was representing them. So the prosecution did not meet clear proof.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Polanco, or who's calling our third defense witness?
Your Honor, I still need to do my cross-examination.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Ms. Smith, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Professor Owen, you testify exclusively for defense in trials.
Yes, I do. I render myself as a check on police.
And you are getting paid upwards of $7,000 for your work in this case. So
yes,
far.
But it's not about the money for me.
I'm sure. You never physically investigated the crime scene personally, correct?
No, I did not.
So you simply analyzed the evidence gathered by the police and the good detective to form your ideas?
Yes. Well, as I said, I'm a check on police, and I found many inconsistencies in
Professor Owen. Your Honor, permission to direct the witness towards image previously marked Exhibit 7.
All right. And Professor Van Owen, do you have a copy of Exhibit 7?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Smith?
Professor, is this one of the images that you were analyzing of the crime scene?
Yes.
Would you say that it's a fair and accurate representation of what that crime scene looked like?
Yes. But this wasn't. This drawer wasn't open at the crime scene.
Professor, please. And in this drawer, there are many types of knives, correct?
Yes.
Different brands, different sizes, shapes, etc.
Yes.
And in the previously spoken of Exhibits 6 and 8, there was a sticking point of the knife in Exhibit 6, the murder weapon, not fitting with the knives in the block of Exhibit 8. Is it possible that the murder weapon had come from the drawer of knives in Exhibit 7?
I guess it is possible, but since there's a knife missing from the knife block.
You stopped being a police officer how long ago again?
I stopped being a police officer right after my incident with the woman of color.
Thank you. That is all, Your Honor.
Mr. Polanco, any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Professor Van Owen, you are getting paid a significant amount of money. Does that impact your work?
No, I just want to get to the truth. I want to help the family in this case, and I want to get the right person prosecuted.
So if you're getting paid $5 or $5,000, that still wouldn't have impacted your work?
Yeah, absolutely not. I still would have done the same amount of work as I do for every case.
And Professor, you have been tendered as an expert in police practices, forensic evidence techniques, crime scene reconstruction, and general police investigation tactics. Does that give you enough knowledge or background to be able to investigate a case just by having the evidence and facts?
Yes, it does.
And finally, Professor, Exhibit 7 shows the knives. Was that drawer open when you walked onto the scene?
No, it wasn't.
No further questions, Your Honor.
The witness wasn't actually on the scene at any point in time and therefore wouldn't know if the drawer was open.
Mr. Polanco, response?
I said no further questions, so I will go ahead and null that last
I'm
question.
sustaining the objection on no personal knowledge. So that answer will be stricken. And then Mr. Polanco, at this time, is this witness free to be excused?
Yes, the witness is dismissed.
All right. Thank you, Professor. To the prosecution, any rebuttal case?
I'm terribly sorry. What do you mean?
Do you have any rebuttal case?
What do you mean rebuttal case?
All right. This is my first experience with mock trial. So
We haven't,
traditionally, the prosecution has an opportunity to provide a rebuttal case. At this time, if we proceed to closings, we certainly can do that if that's procedure.
the defense has one more witness to bring forward.
Oh my goodness. This is hard to do virtually. I cannot keep all the visuals going on. All right, to the defense. Will you please call your third witness?
Yes, we call Avery Becker to the stand.
All right. And Mr. Becker, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give before the court today shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, you may go ahead and lower your hand. And Ms. Henry, you may go ahead and begin your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please state your name and spell your last for the court.
Avery Becker, Becker.
Mr. Becker, why are you here today?
I'm being charged with first-degree murder and second-degree burglary of a dwelling.
And how did you know Mr. Brackman?
He was my high school mock trial coach.
Did you ever have any disputes with Mr. Brackman?
Yes, quite a few.
And where did these disputes take place?
Inside and outside of mock trial.
What disputes took place inside of mock trial?
He would call me lazy and unprepared and write my closing.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Ms. Henry, response?
This was said from the victim, who is unfortunately no longer with us, and it was said directly to Mr. Becker.
I'm going to overrule the objection based on the fact that while it is an out-of-court statement, at this time it may be being shown to evince the effect on the listener and is not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted.
Thank you, Your Honor. How did this make you feel?
It was frustrating because I was really good at mock trial. I could do a cross simply by listening to a witness's story.
What disputes took place outside of mock trial?
I wrote on his car with a Sharpie with what I thought was a dry erase marker at the time.
To be clear, were you aware that this marker was not temporary?
No, I was not. I thought it was dry erase marker.
And how did Mr. Brackman respond to this?
He got super frustrated with me and kicked me off the mock trial team.
How did you feel about being taken off the team?
I mean, I was upset. I was super good at mock trial and one of the best attorneys for our team.
After the incident involving Mr. Brackman's car, did you ever attempt to reach out?
Yes, I tried going to his office to apologize, but his secretary said he didn't want to speak to me.
And were you ever able to contact him?
No, I tried sending some text messages apologizing, but he never responded to me.
The day before the murder, where were you?
I was at the Fry Shack with Taylor Perkins.
And what happened at the Fry Shack?
We saw a bunch of people from the mock trial team, including Alex Fuentes.
You've mentioned your teammate, Alex Fuentes. What is your relationship with him?
We weren't really friends. We didn't really get along at all.
And did anything else happen that night?
Yes, I lost my phone.
Did you ever find your phone?
No,
The day of the murder, where were you?
I was with Taylor searching for my phone.
And after searching that day, did you happen to find your phone?
No,
Mr. Becker, to your best conclusion, solely based off of your observation and your knowledge of your relationships, what would you say happened to your phone?
Objection,
Alex
Your Honor,
Fuentes would've-
speculation.
Overruled. I'll allow the witness to answer what he thinks happened to his phone.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
no, that's okay. I think that Alex Fuentes took my phone from the last place I saw at the Fry Shack.
All right, and back to Mr. Brackman. Did you know of anybody else who had had a bad relationship with him?
I know that Blair Rollins hated him as well because of their relationship.
And what do you know about Blair?
All I know is that they're about the same. Me and Blair are about the same height and build, and Blair and Alex are friends.
Is there anything else about your relationship with Mr. Brackman you would like to say?
Mr. Brackman and I may have not always gotten along, but he was a good coach and he got us to a good place.
Are you aware of the charges against you today?
Yes.
And did you commit these charges?
No, I learned my lesson after the first incident, and I wish I could have given him an apology about it.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examination.
All right, Ms. Becker. Is it true that you, quote, messed up Brackman's car? I'm sorry, Mr.
I suppose, yeah. I drew on his car with a permanent marker.
And you and Mr. Brackman did not get along very well. Is that correct?
Correct. He would call me lazy and unprepared, even go as far as rewriting my closing argument.
That a yes or no will be okay. Is it true that you and Miss Perkins were, quote, best buds?
Yes.
Is it true that you said Mr. Brackman accused you of being lazy?
Yes.
And is it true that you thought you could win best attorney at not just regionals, but also state?
Objection,
Yes.
relevance.
Mr. Aladsani, response?
This is important because it shows that Mr. Becker here is very prideful in his abilities to be a good mock trial student, and it's going to be important for my next couple questions.
Okay. I'm going to overrule the objection. It may go to show bias of the witness.
All right. Do you want me to repeat that question?
Yes, please.
Okay. Is it true that you thought you could win best attorney at not just regionals, but also state?
Yes.
You tried everything to convince Brackman to put you back on the A team after he kicked you off because of the argument you two had over your lack of preparation, right?
Yes.
Isn't it true that according to your witness statement, you said, quote, if it wasn't for me and a couple of others on A team, we would have lost regionals, end quote.
Correct.
Okay. Is it true that you stormed out of practice and vandalized Brackman's white Porsche with a permanent marker?
Yes, but I thought it was a dry erase marker.
After this occurred, did Brackman come up behind you and start apologizing for getting down on you and wanted you to come back to practice?
Yes, but then he saw what
Is
I
it
did.
true that you were even more angered after Brackman kicked you off the team for writing, quote, worst attorney award on his Porsche?
Yes.
When you came home, you told your mom that you would get back at him if it was the last thing you did.
Yes, but she was trying to calm me down. and
Yes or no?
make me too good.
And that's okay. Your Honor, I would like to show the witness exhibit 14.
Okay.
I'm assuming you have Exhibit 14 in front of you. Is this um, a fair and accurate representation of the text messages you sent?
I did not send these text messages.
But it's from your phone.
Yes, but my phone was stolen.
And
at
it
the time.
says Avery Becker on the top, correct?
It says Avery Becker, but again, someone stole my phone.
Yep, yes or no will be okay. And finally, you were not at school on the day of March 6th, 2020, correct?
Correct. I was with Taylor Perkins.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect, Ms. Henry.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Becker, were you aware of any text messages sent from your phone on the day of March 6th?
No, again, I think that Alex Fuentes stole my phone.
And while your relationship with Mr. Backman was bad, was there anything else you would like to say regarding it?
I wish I could have told him that I was sorry. I know that riding on his car was too far after I did it.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
And Mr. Aladsani, any redirect based on that limited amount of, recross based on that limited amount of redirect?
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. At this time, then, we will proceed to closing arguments. I believe, based on my earlier notes, Ms. Smith, are you presenting closing arguments for the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Smith, your closing argument.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Your Honor, opposing counsel, today we have been presented with a tale of murder and petty revenge. Avery Becker, a volatile teen feeling angry and slighted by his demotion and then removal from the mock trial team, murdered Coach Brackman, the perceived source of his dishonor. The defense would have you believe that he was framed and that another committed this crime. But is this reasonable? The defense has put forward to defend their case Avery Becker himself, who, as anyone else would, did not give any indication of his own guilt. They have put forward Taylor Perkins, Avery Becker's best friend in the world, and most loyal accordingly. And they have put forward Blake Van Owen, an investigator who did not even appear or see the crime scene in person, but is oh goodness. Did I mute myself that whole time?
Just for the last about sentence or so.
Oh, okay. Where did I leave off? I'm sorry.
Ms. Smith, you had gone on about them being best friends.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
That's quite all right.
And the defense has put forward Blake Van Owen, an investigator who did not even see the scene in person, but is confident in picking out the flaws of the detectives and the police's hard work. These witnesses are biased and have shown us nothing more than speculation and shadows in accusing Blair Rollins instead. From the prosecution, you have seen the testimonies of two professional crime scene investigators, Detective Jordan, the first person on the scene, and the woman who conducted a full police investigation, and Kyle Kuzak, an expert in crime reconstruction who investigated the scene personally to draw his conclusions, along with the statements of Alex Cifuentes, Avery's peer and good friend, who showed us Avery's motives and state of mind as he committed murder. Your Honor, opposing counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we, the prosecution, bear the burden of proof. We must demonstrate that Avery Becker is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And we have, with the investigation and reconstruction work done by the good detective and Kyle Kuzak, along with the first-hand account of Becker's mindset from his close friend Avery Becker. The defense has shown us a shadow of a doubt, but no reasonable doubt. They show only a frail conjecture of an unrelated party being guilty instead. Therefore, I must ask, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and Your Honor, that you find Avery Avery Becker guilty of first-degree murder as she killed an innocent man for nothing more than petty revenge and teenaged pride.
Thank you. And closing for the defense, I believe, Ms. Henry.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go
No
ahead, Ms. Henry.
face.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No face, no case. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today you must decide if the prosecution has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker, a high school student only connected to the victim through mock trial, committed the heinous crimes of murder in the first degree and second degree burglary of a dwelling. The prosecution must provide solid evidence of the location, offenses, venue, identification, and date and time of the crime. The prosecution must show and prove all of these beyond a reasonable doubt to be able for you to find Avery Becker guilty. And the prosecution cannot even place Avery Becker at the scene of the crime. No face, no case. The prosecution's witnesses consist of a civilian police employee for the police department, Kyle Kuzak, who processed the scene after others had already processed it and read reports to come to his conclusion, which he himself said could never give the full picture of a case. He also read reports from the prosecution's other witness, Detective Markowitz, who even after roughly 13 years of experience, lost evidence from the scene of the crime. Markowitz also didn't even look into the possibility of other suspects. He did his investigation with Avery in mind as the only suspect, completely disregarding another suspect with a motive far more likely. Blair Rollins was also a student in mock trial, and her motive is far more likely due to her father being sentenced to life in prison because of the victim, Mr. Brackman, losing his case. Blair's father was even recorded in court saying that he would get the victim back if it was the last thing he did. Blair Rollins would not be a surprising suspect in this case. But the lack of justice and police work put into this investigation by the prosecution's witnesses show that the burden and other suspects were not looked into. The prosecution's last witness, Alex Cifuentes, was said to be close friends with Blair and was there the night Avery Becker's phone went missing. Alex had everything to gain from the permanent removal of Mr. Becker. The defense has shown you 3 witnesses. The first is Taylor Perkins, a close friend of Avery Becker's who was there with Avery the day of the crime and testifies that there is no way Avery could have committed the crime because they were with each other during the day, including the time of the crime. Next, we have Professor Van Owen. He has testified to believing the investigation conducted by the prosecution's Detective Markowitz was rushed. Van Owen also testifies to seeing pictures of Avery and Blair and saying they are of the same height and build. All of this coming from a private investigator, a professor, and an expert in police practices. Last, we have Avery Becker himself, the suspect in a case where others were not even looked into. Avery Becker was not the perfect student, but he is sorrowful and regretful for his past with Mr. Brackman. Being late does not create a murderer. A mock trial dispute does not create a murderer. The prosecution has tried to place him at the scene with a phone not even in his possession. There is a difference between a marker and a knife. I urge you to ask yourselves if it is just to convict Avery Becker on the counts of murder in the first degree and second degree burglary in a dwelling when there is no true evidence or DNA, might I add, placing him at the scene. No face, no case.
And then any rebuttal argument from the prosecution, Ms. Smith.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Everybody, we've been instructed to allow a little bit more time for our critiques since this is being done in kind of a virtual format, and with the score sheets that we have, you don't get necessarily some written comments from the scorekeepers. So at this time, I believe we have some of our scorekeepers here, Mr. Vasu or Ms. Riley, Ms. Clark. Any general comments?
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you hear me okay?
I can, thank you.
Great. I'll make a few general comments and then I've got a couple of just some specific comments. I'm impressed because obviously these are less than ideal circumstances for everybody. a remote trial. I haven't done yet, thankfully. The silver lining is that all of you have essentially passed a master's class in dealing with adversity. Things don't usually go the way that you want them to, but you all did a fantastic job of dealing with technical difficulties and things that don't usually come up. And you were still effective. And so bravo to all of you. Chloe, especially, I know you had some technical difficulties and it didn't ruffle you at all. You just pressed on and it was impressive. The witnesses for both sides, I think probably the best performances I've seen over the last handful of years that I've been scoring the mock trial. Well prepared, you knew your cases, and you played your parts fantastic. Cross-examinations for both sides. I thought both sides did a really good job of following up with the witnesses to pin down particular answers that maybe had gotten a little fuzzy. A couple of just quick specific comments. Rudy, I thought your opening statement was great. I liked the theme that you started that carried then through the closing argument. And also the step-by-step outline of evidence as part of your opening statement, I thought was very effective. So good job. Abigail, I thought your performance as Alex Cifuentes was great. Excellent performance. You know the facts in and out. You played the part perfectly. For the prosecution, good job in your closing argument. That great enthusiasm, and again, dealing with some technical difficulties and audio problems. You didn't let it derail you and you pressed on. So good job with that. And then the defense, again, I think particularly you did a good job of getting what you needed and then moving on. And sometimes you'll see that you ask one question too many, and it can undo a lot of really hard work. And you avoided that. When you got the answer that you needed, you didn't press it for just a little bit better. You accepted it and moved on. And then you connected those dots in your closing argument, and it was very effective. So great job, everybody.
Thank you.
I would echo a lot of what Mr. Rousseau said. You guys did an excellent job, and certainly less than ideal circumstances. One thing, there were a fair number of objections during this trial, which I think is great. It's great practice. But what really struck me is that regardless of the outcome of the objection, nobody seemed flustered after the fact. And that's something that happens in real life, is that the outcome can derail people or get people off track or have people lose focus. And I thought that you guys did, an excellent job of arguing the objections both for and against. But then the outcome, you guys just picked up and moved right along, excuse me, regardless of what happened. And I thought that was really impressive. I guess the one thing that I noticed that I think could be something you all work on in the future, and this is both for the prosecution and the defense, I could tell when you were reading because you really sped up. And it's totally normal to be nervous in this kind of environment. It's normal to be nervous in court. But that was one thing I think, if you try to be more intentional and slow down and take some breaths, I think that would be helpful, especially during the opening and the closing when you're just talking for long periods of time. But I thought you guys did a really excellent job, and you should all be very proud of yourselves.
Ms. Riley?
Hi. Well, congratulations, everybody. I'm so impressed that you do this. And I think for everyone, this is an extracurricular. So in addition to attending school and dealing with all of that, you're doing this, and everyone clearly came prepared. This is something you can't fake. In spite of what the problem may lead you to believe, I don't think that a good mock trialer can come in and just wing it. And it's clear that you didn't. to echo some of what some other folks have said, I loved the themes that were carried through. I do think it helped to focus the direction of the evidence, make it interesting. I love what you guys did with really a case that was pretty dense. I mean, there was a lot going on in this problem, and I was a prosecutor for quite a while and worked with call detail records and some of this types of data. It's confusing. It's confusing for honest to goodness attorneys. And a lot of you understand this better than some honest to goodness real attorneys. So hats off, very impressive. And I agree with what Ms. Clark said. If you try cases, the other side's going to land punches. They just are. And some things are not going to go the way that you'd planned. And you have to anticipate that. Instead of hoping for perfection, you have to really just keep going. And I'm really impressed that everyone is able to do that. Great job by the witnesses. I think you played some very believable characters. It seems like you really stuck to what was in the problem, which is helpful. But really, great work, everybody. I'm super impressed.
And I'd just like to say, I will echo the same comments that everybody has had so far. I'm blown away by how you guys are able to navigate this. Clearly, I have not done a trial on Zoom, or our platform is WebEx. We did do some trials during the pandemic, but they were all in person. So I could see where witnesses were, and I could see which attorneys had discussed the questions. So I really appreciate that you guys have honed your craft on this virtual platform. I think it's really impressive. I thought everybody, as Ms. Riley was saying, clearly knows this case, has done this case, has practiced their roles, has done a really nice job. Again, what Ms. Clark said, I really like that you guys responded to not just saying the objection, but then when I asked for a response, you gave a good response. And if there were any response to the response, that was also really helpful. Sometimes judges rule just like that, and they will make a ruling based on only the objection. A lot of times they want additional information as to what is the justification or what is the support behind asking this question. And you guys did a really nice job as to responding to my requests. You also tolerated a judge that was having some procedural difficulties of my own. So I really appreciate the professionalism that all of you had and the way that you conducted yourselves. I think it was a really good round, and you all did a very, very nice job.
So thank you, Your Honor. And I'm waiting to get confirmation from the coordinators that all of the score sheets have been received before we dismiss the scores. Scores, I will remind you, there is a ballot to cast for best witness and best attorney on the score sheet. Should have filled that out.
Mr. Vittegard, let me just ask you,
Yes.
I do not score as the judge, correct? I took
correct.
down scores. I just wanted to make sure that I did not have to submit the score sheet.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Right.
Well, good luck to everybody. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video for just a second so I can eat a snack.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, I'm going to stop.